Are we live? I know. How dare I tell all of you specifically that I have a headache and then start my stream 2 minutes late? How dare I? I know I'm the worst YouTuber starting a stream 2 minutes behind schedule because I had to go run and taking a leave so I could still stream. How dare I? There we go. Chat was like weirdly small for some reason. And I was like, oh my god, you're running late again. Like I pretty much almost always start streams within like 2 or 3 minutes of when they're supposed to start. Like, I don't know what you want from me. Like, do you think this just magically happens? Like I just turn my computer on and then it starts? No, I have to plug in all my audio equipment. I have to check my audio. I have to get the fan set up so my camera doesn't overheat. I have to check my lighting. I gotta do all this. I gotta make sure the background's clear. Like, there's a process, okay? And sometimes it takes a minute longer than expected to do. So just, I'm really gonna try and stream because I don't like canceling stuff. But if anyone's gonna be sassy and thinks it's cute to be sassy about me starting literally 2 minutes late, you will be put in timeout, okay? I don't have patience for that right now. I'm trying my best, okay? Like, just come on. Okay, so with that being said, let's not ruin the vibe. We're not here to ruin the vibe. I just want to make it sure, because some people think it's cute to joke about things, and I try to nip that shit in the bud. I just don't like having, it's like, we're not friends. You don't get to just tease me, okay? That's not how this works. Yes, sassy people get corner time. I do not consent to your bratting. Brats are fine. Don't consent to your bratting at this particular moment. I don't have any patience for several reasons going on right now that will be discussed in a video very soon. My emotions are already struggling, all right? We're having a little struggle bus, but that is part of life. So how's everyone else's Friday going? Hopefully better than mine in terms of headache and other things happening. But yeah, it is Friday. Okay. You also just moved into a new apartment, so it's very stressful. I do feel like I'm more settled in now. I moved in over a month ago at this point, but yeah, it's been like, there's just been so much has happened in this place. Like, everything in the kitchen's broken. The sink leaked, the dishwasher leaked, the fridge leaked, like everything leaked, everything broke. So it was like definitely the first like couple weeks, and I had COVID. Oh god. I don't know how I got through all that, but eventually I did. And, you know, part of that was sort of, I took a little bit of a break from YouTube to kind of deal with all that stuff and getting things set up, which I hate doing, but, you know, moving. It is complicado. Ooh, it's Saturday morning, so that's like, ooh, we've got, of course, we have the Australia people and New Zealanders in the house. Yeah, it's very hot everywhere. I think the only place it's not, like, burning hot at the moment is probably, like, Alaska and San Francisco, from what I can tell. Everywhere else in the whole U.S. and in Europe is, like, 35 to 40 degrees Celsius / like 90 to 1/100 in Fahrenheit. And this is not a fun time, you know? Not a fun time. Hey, just found out that the store that I'm working at is closing early because of a threatened gang war. Well, okay. Get home safe. Well, what does that even mean? Get home safe. Jesus. Please keep me in your minds and thoughts. Good vibes, prayers, thoughts appreciated. Okay, well, good luck. I I hope you get home safe. That sounds very scary, and definitely hope they let you home early so that way you can leave before anything sketch happens. Hello from Alaska. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, happy Friday. How's everyone doing? Good evening, everyone, and especially to you, Evie. Been talking up the sex room cast from earlier this week. Oh, is that from like when we watched How to Build a Sex Room? Yeah, they a lot of them actually. It's funny, they didn't really like advertise any of their social media or anything, and I was kind of expecting they would, but like y'all did some detective work and found out some of the people and like their Instagrams and stuff. That was cool. Not that I encourage stalking, but it's just nice to see, you know, that they're continuing to be happy. Because who knows? I don't even know when they filmed it. They could have filmed it like pre-COVID for all I know. I don't think they did though, because the way that they filmed the show, because normally with like design shows, they do a lot of like picking out the furniture and going to the store to look at different options for stuff. And they don't really focus so much on like the process of the design and having some of the drama for the show come from like, oh my god, this thing I ordered is back ordered, now we have to pick something else, or I can't find a couch that works in this space. Like, there's none of that sort of drama in the show. It's mostly just couple, we meet the couple, we talk to them, we design a space, we render it in Blender, and then they go and do a couple's activity, and then the room is designed. Like, that's it. That's the whole flow of the episode. So, yeah. But I am planning, depending on how I feel, I'm hoping this headache is not a multi-day thing. I'm hoping it's just like tonight, and then, you know, I'll just chug some water and hopefully be good. I'm not really sure what's causing the headache, but I feel like it might be dehydration, just because that's what it oftentimes is related to, and water usually helps. So, but if I am able to film tomorrow or Sunday, I'm planning on doing a review of the show How to Build a Sex Room. So if you are one of the people who's been asking me if I've seen the show or if I'm going to review it, yes, a review is coming. I am going to do that really, really soon. So hopefully you guys will see it before like 3 months from now. I will get that done as soon as I can. I'm kind of wondering how to actually tackle doing a review for the series, though. Oh, thank you, Hadley.
I donated $12. You're the best and deserve good things.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I will stick to drinking the water for now, but in terms of good things, a good thing for me will be after this will be taking a nap. So I will do that probably after we're done with this stream. But yeah, I'm kind of figuring out how I want to do the structure of the review. So maybe if something sticks out to you guys, you can let me know. Because one way of doing it is, I think I more did this. Oh, what happened? All right, microphone freaked out for a second there. One way of doing this is I can do a review format where it's episode by episode and kind of give a summary of each episode and my thoughts about it. But that doesn't really work because the way the episodes are structured is basically they introduce like one couple or group or whatever that they're designing a room for, and then they introduce a new couple partway through the episode, and so there ends up being overlap from episode to episode with each couple. So I feel like it makes more sense to break it down as like a review of each couple's room and vibe and like kind of my overall thoughts based on that, and then maybe kind of doing a ranking of like our favorite rooms and our favorite couples, and doing not really like a sort of like a dual tier list of like best rooms and best couples, because unfortunately not all the best couples get the best rooms and vice versa. So that's sort of what I'm more leaning towards, as opposed to like episode by episode. And then that way I can kind of skip over like the things that don't really interest me about the episodes and kind of just focus on the details I do like. And then kind of, you know, for things that aren't strictly about like the couples in the rooms, kind of talking about the overall format of the show, what I liked about, what I didn't, and, you know, just sort of keeping in perspective the fact that it is a reality TV show being filmed in today's day and age, where, you know, everything has to involve, you know, manufactured drama and hype, which is, it is weird the way they do cliffhangers in the show, though, because they it's like they do it as though it's like trying to hook you for the next episode, but it almost kind of doesn't work because all the episodes come out simultaneously. So it's like, okay, we just click play next episode. Like, it's like there's like a huge cliffhanger, but it doesn't really need to be there because the next episode's like already about to autoplay. So like, what's the point? You know, I just feel like the cliffhangers are sort of unnecessary, but that may be just like a genre staple of reality TV. I'm not sure. So, in any case, a review for How to Build a Sex Room. I will briefly say it is very kink centric, to the point that she, as a designer, Melanie Rose is her name, she kind of struggles to design rooms that are just vanilla. Like, if somebody tells her, well, we're just really vanilla, like, we've explored other stuff, we're really comfortable, you know, just keep it old-fashioned, or whatever it is they say. And she kind of just is like, okay, but what about the handcuffs, though? Like, what? Like, are you sure you don't want a butt plug? Can I interest you in a blindfold, perhaps? And I'm like, no, we're fine, we don't want any of that. And she's like, I don't get it. Like, it's funny. She doesn't understand. Like, when she has to design a room that doesn't have kink in it, she goes, well, how can I make this a sex room then? And I'm like, I don't know. Anyways, I don't want to spoil all my thoughts about it. I just want to like let you guys know that I've watched it. A review is coming. It's happening. My brain just has to not feel like it's being freezer burned. I don't even really know what that means, but that's the sensation that is happening currently. Whoa, we have 130 people watching. Hello, everyone. Welcome. By the way, I did kind of experiment today and turn on subscriber only mode because I'm hoping that's going to help with actually getting through trolls and spam and stuff. So just FYI, that is what we're doing. Oh my gosh, thank you, Devansh, Canodia. Sorry, that was probably entirely wrong. I genuinely do not know what to say, but thank you so much. Okay, so this actually gives me a good moment to sort of talk about this. So one, I do have subscriber only mode turned on right now. So if you want to be in the chat, if you're not already, if you somehow found this stream somewhere else, do go ahead and subscribe. That way you can chat, because otherwise this is just sort of a test of a spam filtering tool, more or less. This is an 18 plus only stream, so if you're not at least 18, please do not be here. That is just for my safety, your safety, because we do talk about a lot of adult topics on these, streams, and sometimes they get into territory where maybe we don't want to be mixing, 15-year-olds having conversations with 30-year-olds. So we are just keeping it all safe that way, both for yourself and for me and for everyone in the chat. If you are someone who is younger and you are discovering your sexual orientation, your sexuality, you think you might be into kink or whatever else, that is totally fine. You can go to Scarletine. They have really good resources for all that stuff. Unfortunately, though, this is just not an appropriate place for me to facilitate those conversations. Also, just make sure that you do read the rules and the FAQ down below. That is going to give you insight into kind of everything about these streams. And I don't really have too many rules. It's just sort of be nice, don't spam. I don't give instructions on like medical stuff or psychiatric help. So if you want to know if like a mark you got after you did a scene is infected or not, I'm not going to be able to help you with that in a stream. So go to a doctor. Or if you want to know if it's safe for you as a person who has bipolar disorder to engage in 24/7 live in no limits, like slave contract type scenario, I can't personally answer that because I am not a mental health professional. I'm not your therapist, and that is a very individual process to determine if something is safe or not. So just some really, really quick things there, but otherwise we are here to chat and talk about either what is in the title of this, because I did recently post a video where I talked about MS relationships, total power exchange relationships, and 24/7 BDSM relationships, and I think it's just like a good idea to follow up on recent topics and just see if there's any sort of remaining questions, any thoughts, any experiences. I feel like we all kind of had, at least from the comments, I feel like we all had sort of the same reaction to the people that were like on the internet in the 90s being like, well, this is what I think a real BDSM relationship should look like, and just kind of being like, why do you have to be the one to decide this for all of us for decades on in history? Like, how does that work? So I'm more than happy to sort of discuss those things and answer questions around that. Or we can talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about, anything related to kink, BDSM, asexuality, polyamory, dating, like really anything related to alternative lifestyles, sexual health, sexual being, anything like that, we can really just get into. And if you want to make sure that I do answer your question, I know, sorry, it was a long spiel today for some reason. I haven't been this thorough in a while. There is a super chat option, so you can either click on the $sign. You guys have already seen it pop up twice today so far in the stream. You can either go ahead and click a $sign and pay a dollar amount, and then if you include a question in that, I will answer right away. Thank you so much. Tina, yes, perfect timing. So if you do that, I will answer your question. Miss Tina says, do you know any information about the Gorean? I'm still not sure if it's Gorean or Gorean. Does it rhyme with Korean or does it not? I will answer that right as soon as I finish answering sort of the last little part of this spiel. So, you can do it through YouTube, and there's also a link to Streamlabs down below. You can use PayPal through that, I believe, and that also means that YouTube isn't taking 30% of your super chat revenue. Yes, YouTube, if you didn't know this, takes 30% of all super chats just for themselves, just for funsies. It's literally a racket. It is literally YouTube's version of going, gosh, sure would be a shame if something happened to all that stream revenue, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it just be better to have a little bit of protection? Like, that's literally what YouTube does. It's like you're Google. Like, how do you not have a bajillion dollars from YouTube as a revenue source anyways? So, in any case, that's the spiel. Let's answer Miss Tina's question and talk about the Gorean lifestyle. So I personally do not participate in gore. This is not something that I have personal experience with, so obviously big caveat there. But I have read about it because it is so connected to things like MS and 24/7 relationships and a lot of sort of the features and styles of gore, which is sort of I'll get into it in a second. Has really influenced sort of mainstream heterosexual BDSM in a really big way. I would sort of compare it to the way that like Tom and Finland influenced like gay BDSM aesthetics. But in this, actually, is there like a particular lesbian icon that influenced like lesbian BDSM aesthetics, or was it just sort of like Tom and Finland was like everyone? I would love to know and answer that question, because lesbian BDSM information, especially historical stuff, is much harder to come across because that's just how life goes. Also, I am rolling up my headphones here. So the gore lifestyle, or the Gorean lifestyle, is based on a series of books, I believe, from someone named John Norman. I'm not looking this up to verify right now, so you might have to double check me on this. Basically a series of books that are sort of sci-fi fantasy novels that have been, like, he's still writing them to this day, right? Like, George R.R. Martin ain't got nothing on this man. Okay. It's just, he's a very prolific writer. He's still, as far as I know, personally writing books to this very day, and he has for many, many, many decades about sort of this alternative Earth-like, I don't know if it's an alternative version of Earth, or it's like a kind of a galaxy long, long ago and far, far away type thing. But in any case, there's a planet called Gore, and on that planet, there are basically there's a society that is made of like powerful warriors, and then there's slaves that serve various levels of society, whether that be, kitchen maids or housemaids, but sort of the one that gets most focused on are the like sexual like pleasure and house slaves, and that is the term that's used in the books and in the novels are called Kajira. And they wear different colors of, like, basically fancy silk scarves. Like, white is used for ones that have, I think it's, white's been, wait, okay, sorry. At some point I should just start Googling this to verify, because I have looked this up before, but it's not, like, something I spend, like, my free time thinking about. Red silk versus white.
Trixie Short donated $5.
Thank you.
Do you have advice on how to sext an allosexual partner who wants it when you're ace?
Okay.
My partner really is into it, and I often have trouble knowing what to say.
I will get to that when I am done with my gore spiel, but good question. Okay, yeah, so it was what I thought it was. So a white silk girl is like a version that hasn't been claimed by her master yet, and like a red silk girl is, and there's a bunch of nuances with like the hierarchies and how they interact with different people and blah blah blah. Sort of the main I would say things that kind of permeate into BDSM culture in general from gore would be slave position training. I have a video about that on my channel that I recently made where I talked kind of more in detail with notes about this subject because it is very directly related to this. There's certain very common positions, and the names for those positions are taken from the gore novels. And if you Google them, if you Google BDSM slave positions, you will surely within the first 2 Google results find exactly what I'm talking about, and that comes from the gore novels. That continues to be very popular, and even iterations of it that are not based on gore directly very much are influenced by it to some degree, even though, you know, there's other sort of areas you can take position training elements from, be it pet trick training or pony training or military drill or other things like that, but gore tends to be sort of the overriding like flavor of everything in that regard. Also, slave collars can oftentimes, depending on the style that they're done in, there's the story of O style collar that is very often seen. I wish I had a way to like share pictures on this easily. I'm gonna see if I have a way to do that real quick. Just because I think it could be good for like a way to compare everything, because there's sort of like the traditional like story of O style collar that a lot of people are very familiar with, especially because I think there was a movie version actually, and then there's also a gore version as well. So if you see there used to be a designer here. I'll put this on in the chat just because why not? Why not share some more information? So there is a collar. Unfortunately, the people who make this collar, they're not in business anymore and haven't been for a while. It's very, very sad. I had a collar from them that I wore for many years, and they are peer to no one as far as I'm concerned. No one is their peer. No one does stuff like they do. They are just really, really good. And they made a style of collar that was directly influenced by the particular style of gore collar. So that is something that you see a lot of. That's something that you know is in sort of BDSM culture. From what I understand, let's talk about how gore works as like a subculture within BDSM a little bit. So gore is sort of seen as, depending on who you ask, like either part of BDSM or sort of related to but separate from BDSM. In the way that like there's people who have a latex fetish that like aren't really part of BDSM culture, even though they engage in something that's like very visually identifiable with BDSM. And then there's also people that are like ABDLs, and ABDLs are not always part of the BDSM community, though some are, and they have like overlapping kinks and stuff, right? So in any case, with gore, you know, you'd get a lot of people who had like book clubs forming around like an interest in reading the book and wanting to have a lifestyle based off of it. And some people just read the books and just enjoy them as books, but a lot of people were like, wow, this is really super hot. I want to have something like this in my actual life. How do I do that? And so they would form communities around that, either through newsletters or through other early internet devices and like long distance correspondence. And then you also had people that obviously met in real life. As far as I know, there's not a lot of like really big established like gore communities that are in person where like everyone in the group is like in the gore lifestyle. It tends to be more like individual clusters, like a couple of people maybe in like a polycule or like a harem type scenario. But it's always been very popular since the early days of the internet. It's a lot of role play on forums and, you know, AOL Instant Messenger and what's the more recent one? The name of it is escaping me. Not IMVU. I always forget the name of this and I confuse it with IMVU every time. Second Life, I think is what it is. So Second Life and places like that are also really popular. Lots of MMOs, like MUDs, like you get lots of people that are into gore and all sorts of crevices of the internet, and that DeviantArt, like Twitter, Tumblr, probably like all over the place. So they tend to have more like meet people and do like online roleplay stuff that way, and then meet in person and potentially form a relationship. After that, yeah, gore grew super prominent in 2000s and 90s. Yeah, I don't have any data about like how many people like identify with the gore lifestyle today versus like 2 decades ago. But I would say that as BDSM has gotten more and more online, and we just have a bigger community and more options, that less people I think are gravitating towards gore. I think it does skew a little bit older. I think it does skew towards a very particular way of doing BDSM. It's not appealing to everyone, and so not everyone's gonna, want to sign up for that necessarily. And it's also very restrictive in terms of like gender. And if you're strictly speaking with like what's in, especially the earlier books, all the submissives are always, and the slaves are always female, and all the dominants are men. Generally, there are like, again, the hierarchy stuff gets complicated, but it is usually very heterosexual. There's not really room for male submissives in like a traditional reading of gore. Online people have sort of invented an alternative term because the Kajira is like inherently like a female word in the language that's used in the books, and so the term Kajiris is used for male submissives, and you may see that on FetLife, for example. But there's not even really on FetLife. There's not really that many people who are into gore, though the gore titles and such are available as choices on the website for like identity labels. But I would say that kind of groups have gotten they're not growing the way that they used to be, but you will definitely see them online. There have definitely been interviews and little like mini documentaries made about people that are in the gore lifestyle that are on YouTube that get like millions of views, and there's sort of a stereotype I think that kind of gets associated with that in a negative way, where it's like too like non-attractive, like kind of older people that sort of want to play at having an MS relationship and then kind of don't really stick with it. I'm not saying that's what gore people actually do, but that's like what the stereotype is from like documentaries you watch about it. So be careful, because it could give you a false impression if you do watch any of those. So just FYI. Kajiris does exist in the book, so it's not big. Oh, does it? My understanding from what I was told is that it was just, maybe it gets introduced in the later books? Interesting. The more you know. Hey, Evie, you rock. Adding to the queue. Thoughts on the rise of sugar... Oh,
$15.
there you go.
Hey, Evie, you rock. Adding to the queue. Thoughts on the rise of sugar daddy dating and intersections with BSDM?
Good job with that one. Yeah, sure. I will talk about that next. Okay, so I will go ahead and sort of wrap up my summary of gore there, I guess. I don't really have any specific resources to direct you to if you want to find out more about gore, just because it's sort of like, I don't know. It's, Oh, and the author, by the way, is John Norman here. I will put his name in the chat just in case you decide you want to read some of the books. John Norman. But yeah. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. If you have any follow-up thoughts about stuff, again, I'm answering this off the top of my head, so I do apologize if any of the details are not perfectly correct. Please fact check me at a later point, but hopefully that gives you at least some like existing basis for, doing some research yourself and kind of understanding a little bit of the basics. But again, it's not my kink. It's not a kink I participate in. I've done a little bit of research about it. And these are just really my impressions, so. All right, let me see. I am terribly sorry. The previous question. Maybe give someone his banner. Okay, that should be the stream froze. Okay, well, I don't think is it still frozen? Jesus, Fred, calm down. Okay. Okay, I know that I got another question. Okay, answered that one about the gore lifestyle. Oh, that must have come through Streamlabs. If the person who did the Streamlabs question, I don't have a way to like get back to that on YouTube since it's gone by, and I'm so sorry. The headache is just killing me. If you can retype your question now, if you're still in the chat, I will get to it right away. I promise. I just was a little. It took too long answering the other question first before I got to yours. I'm sorry. So with that being said, I will talk very briefly because it's gonna be a short question in the meantime while I'm waiting for that about the intersection between like sugar dadding and BDSM. I think this is really interesting. Because I was sort of thinking about this the other day, like because there's like findom, right? There's people that are dominants that receive money primarily from slaves or submissives or bottoms that are giving them tribute. Is very common with female professional dominance. It's totally a thing, and a lot of people are not a fan of that, to say the very least. But you also have, I think, this interesting conflation that's happening between in some areas between like sugar daddying and being a sugar baby and being a submissive, and like, can it be done in a context where it's like a form of like financial domination and control? Like, yes, but it's generally done in a vanilla context because it's like a transactional relationship. Like, it's not based on like a negotiated BDSM framework where it's part of like a larger thing. Like, it is meant to. And I'm not a sugar baby, so if this is maybe not the best way of framing it, let me know how you would frame it. But I would basically describe it as like, it's sort of almost like a vanilla way of approaching like a form of findom, because it's like a transactional sex work based relationship. And what's more interesting to me is like a lot of sugar babies, especially people that are kind of just getting into it. I think this is maybe happening less now because of the fall of Tumblr, because there was a while there on Tumblr and even on YouTube and Twitter to some extent where people were like encouraging like very young college age women to, you know, quit whatever their day job was and to try and become a sugar baby. But the thing is from what I know from people that are like full service sex workers and pro doms, is that for the most part, the men that are like easily available and findable on sugar baby websites who say that they're not looking for sex, a lot of them are the ones that have been blacklisted from all of, you know, the local sex worker groups that are in contact with each other, and they refuse to see this person as a client. And so now they've gone on sugar babying websites where, because people are afraid of having the stigma of like being called a sex worker so much that they don't tend to talk to each other as much. They don't tend to have access to as many resources in terms of, you know, knowing who to avoid and how to avoid them and such. Like, you know, it ends up kind of accidentally sort of becoming a predator funnel of like all the worst people end up on the sugar baby websites, and that's how people get hurt. And so I wouldn't encourage anyone to become a sugar baby, even though it is a valid choice for deciding to make money. It is just a very risky choice for how to make money if that's the route you're going to go. So it's interesting to me that there's my sort of observation, a lot of sugar babies are very reluctant to sort of think about themselves as sex workers, to a point it kind of puts them in danger. And the conflation between doing a transactional relationship and it being like a consensual kink one is interesting, because there is a power dynamic there, right? There is somebody who is, you know, providing for somebody financially in a really big way, and they may dictate how that money is spent. They may, you know, say, hey, like, you know, it's basically like, hey, if you do this for me, I will give you this money. This is how you earn your allowance. This is how, you know, if we go on these certain dates and do these certain things, like, that's how you're getting your money. I wouldn't say though that I've seen like an infiltration of it, or that there's like, you know, all these people are coming into BDSM trying to be sugar babies and it's like ruining the scene or whatever. And maybe it's more that there's like dominant men who say they're sugar daddies and thinking that like a sugar daddy is the same thing as like a capital D dom daddy, which it's not. Very different responsibilities in relationship there. Because being like a daddy in a kink context does not mean that you have to provide money or make more money than your partner or be rich or be, you know, any of the things that are sort of stereotypically associated with being a sugar daddy. So yeah, I think it's more just like outside confusion about the differences between certain labels and certain things, and just sort of going, this is this kind of transaction. It has these certain, like the word sugar baby and sugar daddy sound kind of BDSM-y, and so therefore this relationship must be kinky. And it's like, that's not really how that works, but interesting. Do sugar mommies / daddies look for sex? I'm sure there's sugar mommies. It is like 99% sugar daddies though. They will talk about it euphemistically, and there are some sugar daddies that are not expecting sex out of the relationship, but from my understanding, that is in reality the exception and not the rule. It is basically sex work with extra steps added, where you know, there are dates and going to functions together and going shopping together and doing things of that nature, and you know, the sugar daddy taking on like a provider, like financial caretaker role. But generally speaking, one of the elements that the sugar daddy gets out of that is some form of sexual contact with the sugar baby, either directly negotiated that like, hey, you do this and then you get money, or it's part of like, you know, the overall connection that the two have. But I would say that, you know, telling people that sugar babying isn't a form of sex work, or that sugar daddies on average are not expecting to have sex, is a misconception that has gotten a lot of people into hot water when they have interacted with sugar daddies and tried it for themselves. So I just want to make sure that people are aware of the reality. Yeah, generally sex will be expected, yeah. Yeah, and it is sex work, though some people like to say otherwise. Yeah, I just think that trying to tell young women, well, it's not like you're making porn, it's not like you're being a sex worker, and it's like, okay, so an older man, usually, is giving you money to pay for your textbooks and shoes, and then afterwards you suck his dick in the steakhouse parking lot. I'm pretty sure that's sex work. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's the mental framing of, because what sort of, I think is interesting to think about this is you have a lot of people that are sugar babies that look down on sex work in general and on other forms of sex workers that they consider to be lesser. And it's like, listen, at the end of the day, you know, we're all selling our labor here, so what's going on, right? I just find it to be really interesting, but I think that's a pretty thorough answer to that question. So I will move on back to the question from Streamlabs. So I was the Streamlabs question. Do you have any advice about sexting as an ace person? Okay, the audio version did not know how to say the word sexting, I think. My allo dom really likes it, and I get lost not knowing what to say. Oh man, I could tell you stories about my sexting experiences, my friends. Oh my goodness gracious. Also, wow, there's almost 150 of you in the stream right now. Well, hello everyone, welcome all of you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna answer this question. I'm gonna link to this on Twitter because I realized I didn't do that earlier, and I should let people know that where to hang out, where to join the cool kids club. So as somebody that is also asexual, so I am not someone that generally experiences sexual attraction. I'm more on the A side of things, so I very rarely experience sexual attraction, and I tend to have a lower sex drive. So when it comes to sexting, that was not something I was naturally good at. I was not a naturally curious child in any sort of respect. And I just did not know what to do when I had like some of my first boyfriends, you know, try to take the conversation in that direction. And I did not know what the words were. I literally did not know any slang words for anything. I didn't know. And I'm on my own live stream, so I can say like cock and dick and pussy and whatever, right? Those are words I can say on my own stream. And so I didn't know any of those words. You know, so I only knew like the scientific terminology. I didn't know what was actually, because I had never like masturbated before. I'd never watched porn, so I had no idea what was like arousing or what the signs of physical arousal were. It was just a hot mess all the way around. It was just a really, eventually I figured it out by like playing along with whatever it was that they were saying, and I eventually I worked it out a little bit, but I wouldn't even say now that I'm good at any of that. But if you are wanting to get better at like sexting as an ace person, I think one thing that I think would be really important to know is sort of what is the purpose of the sexting, right? There's sort of sexting as foreplay, which is like I'm getting aroused because I want to have sex later, or we're doing this before we do a BDSM scene. Is it just sort of like nice dalliance during the workday, right? Where it's not really going to end up going anywhere, but you're kind of just entertaining yourself and making the workday or the weekend a little bit more fun. Is it about sort of exploring certain ideas together and putting feelers out to see what it is that you're into, and kind of evaluating, hey, is this like something that my partner's also into? Am I getting good feedback from them? Can we maybe take this outside of a sexting context and into a real life context? There's tons of reasons behind why somebody might be sexting. So I would try and figure out, okay, why is it that we're sexting? Sort of what broad category does it fall into, and that can help sort of steer the direction you are going in. Because if it's like just sort of like weekday dalliance of you know, having fun on your work break, then it doesn't really need to be anything like too serious or too detailed. But if it's something where, you know, it's directly meant to be foreplay for sex later on during the day, and it's going to result in some kind of action, like you don't want to write a check your ass can't cash, I suppose. So you want to be careful about the things that you say, obviously. But generally speaking, you know, especially if your partner is the dominant, they're gonna be more in control of like what's happening during the sexting, right? They're gonna be probably primarily leading the conversation in terms of like, okay, like what's the role play setup for this scene? What is it that you're doing to me? What are my expectations, right? Is this like a completely fantastical scenario? Is it you kissing my boots? Like they're going to kind of already tell you, and what they're saying, what it is that they already find arousing. And your job really is to just play off of that. It's really simple. And actually it's kind of similar to how like verbalizing during sex works, which is like if your partner is saying like, oh my god, yes, that's so hot, like you can sort of repeat back the same sentiment of like, oh my guys, this is like so hot for me too, or like, wow, you look so amazing. So you can play along with like whatever the other person is doing, or just like, and again with like, I'm kind of getting more into, you know, when you're interacting in person, like in an act, like just like, you know, it's different because you're also doing it with a dom, so maybe some of these examples don't work as well. And there's also sort of the question, like, is it just like, I don't really understand what's happening, but I want to play along? Or is this getting into like, I'm feeling repulsed, this is getting uncomfortable or dysphoric type territory? Because that's also like another thing with the ace part of this equation is, you know, for some ace people, like sexting in general is just really uncomfortable and they're not going to want to do it at all. And for other people, because it's just words and not actual actions and things happening, then it's like fine, and they're totally okay playing along with it, even if they might not know what to say back because they're not currently experiencing any form of arousal. So it's also sort of a thing to consider as well. Is it like, is it getting to a point where it's going too far, or what's the deal with that? But I think as the submissive, you're sort of in a position where if you don't know what else to do, you can ask the dom, right? And again, I don't know exactly what kind of like role play or what sort of like sexting you're doing. And it sort of depends on your dom style, right? But like if I was the dominant person and I had somebody like talking to me, like if they didn't know anything else to say, you know, saying something like, and what else can I do to please you, mistress? Or is your submissive satisfying you right now? Or how else may I serve you? Like those sorts of things that are imbued with this submissive essence that can be taken in a sexual way, but also sort of leaves open like more of the kink part of it as well, not just the sexy sex part of it. And so if you don't know what else to say, you can always like put in a question in there and sort of put it on them to be like now you will blank, or I order you to blank, right? And then you can play along with something that's very directive. This is what you're supposed to be doing right now. You know, and I think it's also worth like talking to your partner if they know like what's personally hot for them about the sexting, because different people gravitate towards different things. And you'll find this if you read erotica as well. Certain authors gravitate towards certain things that they include a lot in their writing. Like some writers, they love talking about nipples. Oh my god, they like anytime anything happens to a nipple, pinching a nipple getting erect, putting an ice cube on a nipple, they're going to talk about the nipples, right? Other people couldn't care less about nipples, and they never write about them. It's never included as part of the story. So everyone has their own style and things that they find erotic and thrilling, and so this is a good opportunity for you as a submissive to learn more about your dominant partner and find out more about what turns them on and what they like sexually. And that could be... you know, and I think this is a conversation you have to have outside of the sexting. Like, be like, hey, like when we sex together, I want to do a better job pleasing you. Can you help me by letting me know what it is that you find hot about that? And like, what could I be doing more of? Like, can you give me a report card? Give me something I can work on. And some doms like doing stuff like that, so it also sort of feeds into the power exchange element from that direction as well. Is like, my slave or my submissive wants to please me. Let me give them rules for pleasing me. Yes, I enjoy this. So, you know, that could be, they really like kind of hearing the different bodily sensations. They like things that are really explicitly like genital focused. They may want to hear about like, your inner emotional experience about it, right? Are you feeling really embarrassed? Are you feeling really humiliated? Are you feeling very subservient or loved, or whatever sort of vibe you're trying to go for in it, right? It could be the mental experience. It could be the physical experience. It could be focused on the genitals. It could be about just like pleasing them and demonstrating that you are always keeping them in mind first, and that you're always going back to whatever their pleasure is and keeping the focus on them. So again, there's lots of different motivations behind sexting, and those are just some sort of like my impromptu tips on how to maybe do that as an allo with an allo person, as an ace person, in a sort of more BDSM context. I have not really like sexed like hardly at all in probably like 5 years, so I don't know what the kids are doing these days with the sexting. I don't know what's up with what people are doing with the sexting. So if maybe I am off base about what is the best thing to do, y'all can let me know in your own reply and comment. Let me know some tips and tricks for better sexting, because I am definitely not an expert. And also just like, you know, again, if you don't really know anything else to do or anything else to say, you know, just talking about like how hot something makes you, how amazing it is to be able to serve your partner, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, just reinforcing to them that you're also enjoying the experience is also like sort of a good default thing to do. Now, if you're just role playing, like you can sort of say that even when you're not really feeling it in the moment, but if you're doing it specifically to produce like arousal for the sake of foreplay for sex is going to happen like in real life later, then you do need to be a little bit more like honest about what your genuine like feelings are, so that way there's not any misconceptions about, oh, I thought you were really into that, and you're like, no, I was just playing along. You don't want to end up in that scenario, so you got to be honest about all that stuff. So anyways, moving on, I had a question, so if we're following up on the gore thing just really quickly, I do generally answer questions in order, by the way, unless you do it through a super chat and then it automatically gets, you know, bumped up to the top. But following up on the gore thing, just because we just talked about that, Midnight Lily asked, I had a question about the slave poses. I know that some came from the gore books, but curious if they all did. Not sure if it was my question, though. So that wasn't the question I just got done answering. I do have a video that I did, if you haven't seen it, on position training, and that will go over that. There's a list of poses that are from the gore books, but not every possible slave pose in existence is just from gore. Because there's again, like I sort of said already, there's ones that are based on military drill. There's ones that are based on you know, pet training and things that you know, sort of work in a set alongside gore poses, but aren't from the books. But there's not like a definitive list of like the slave poses, because if you Google it online, even if you look at pictures on FetLife, on Google Images, you will see many different lists and even different versions of the same poses that are from the gore novels, because there's some variance in interpretation of like what the proper way to do them is as well, which is like, of course, as always, every community has disagreements like that. It's just sort of funny that it happens in this area. So sort of long answer short, I suppose, I will say that many of them, like the many classic ones, I think are primarily from gore, but because there is no definitive list of the slave poses, they come from a lot of different sources. All right, let's get into some other questions here. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm so going to be behind in answering everything. I'm going to try my best here. It's also filmed in Colorado. Yeah, it's all in like Boulder and shit. I realized that like halfway through, I'm like, wait, I think every episode's in Colorado. I would love it if they went to a different state next time. Could I possibly do an open interview with you, Evie? I don't know. What's an open interview? What does that mean? Can you let me know what I'm getting into first before I say yes or no? Is this like for a podcast? Like what's going on? What's the background? I think per sex room. So we're going back to talking about the how to build a sex room. They say how to build a sex room, but it's really how to design a sex room, because they don't really like build a lot of, well, there's some that they build, spoiler alert, but they tend to be more like renovating an existing add-on versus like building something from scratch is like a completely new space. But anyways, my pedantic feelings about that aside, sounds like I think per sex room and overall thoughts makes the most sense. Okay. Yeah, I think per sex room makes the most sense. Okay, so it sounds like most people are on the boat of like do it like per sex room, which I think is a good way to go. Oh my gosh, I'm getting married in a week and a half, and this is a nice break from constant chaos and planning. Oh my gosh, Jolie. Well, one, congrats on getting married. Oh my gosh, big life steps happening. But yes, wedding planning chaos is chaos, and I have not gone through it myself, but I have family members who have, and their advice at the end of it is always to tell me to just elope because it's not worth it. So, though I think they actually later they like having the wedding photos and having had the experience. But in the moment where we're at the very tail end, like you are right now with a week to go, you just want to go go to Vegas. No more looking at flowers. No more last minute caterer changes. Just go to Vegas. So best of luck to you, and happy to let you have a break there. It kind of reminds me of How Not to Wear, but instead of the fashion host, it's like a drag rack. Yes, oh my gosh, I loved What Not to Wear. Was like one of my favorite shows as like a middle schooler. I loved that show because I kept just thinking about how amazing, because of course I didn't have any money. I was like, wow, imagine having $500 to spend on clothes. That's like infinite money. And like meanwhile, it's like, or is it 5,000? Is it 500 or 5,000? I feel like it can't just be 500 because that's like not very much of a wardrobe. But then again, this was like 2007 money, so inflation hadn't happened yet, and you could definitely still buy blouses for like $30. But what do I know? That's really only like if you're shopping at like Express, that's like 3 work outfits. Like that's like all you're getting. My favorite part of the show though was when they would do the haircuts, because there was a lot of people who just never did anything with their hair for forever, and they just didn't know how to take care of it, and then like they would come in and be like whoosh, whoosh, and then suddenly they give them this like super amazing modern hairstyle, and that was always perfect. Do I play any Switch games? Not currently. I play the Fire Emblem games and I play Animal Crossing, but not recently. I'm partway through draft 6 of the ALI section of section 213 changes, including the definition of consent, and my eyes are bleeding, need more caffeine. I don't even know what half that sentence means, but you have my sympathy. That sounds like a lot of work. Hello from Boston, indeed. Okay, well, I have scrolled too far, and it won't let me scroll back any farther. So that is where we're at. Let me see here now. I'm gonna get into actually getting to. Why are there so many? Why is everything being blocked? Okay. My favorite part of how to build a sex room was the poly sex room. I have opinions about that because I like that room, but I got vibes from like that group that where I'm like, I like them, but something seems weird. But then again, I just have like poly men, not always my favorite. Damn, I'm kinky, but I can easily imagine ways to make a sex room without kink. Mirrors, lots of candle holders and atmospheric lights, lots of cushions, velvety, luxurious sheets, etc. Yeah, exactly, Caitlin. And it's like she would do that for the rooms, but then she like couldn't help herself. Like it would still be like, and here's a blindfold, and here's a hard point. Like she just couldn't, like she couldn't just stop at like the mirrors and the candles and floor cushions. Okay, she couldn't stop herself. It just wasn't possible. But yeah, she just would be like, what am I supposed to do? It was like, well, if your designs aren't that interesting, are you that good of a designer if you have to like explode them with kinkiness to make them like good designs? I don't know. No, not too old at all. We get people all across the age spectrum here. I think my audience is primarily like mid 20s, but I definitely get people that are 18. I get people in their 60s and 70s. It's all over the place here. We love everyone of all ages. And I will say this for the record, you are never too old to discover BDSM. I know a lot of people don't find out about kink as like a possibility for their relationships until they're, empty nesters and the kids out of the house when they're in their late 40s, 50s, 60s, and they, even after retirement age, and they just go, oh my God, am I too old to start doing this now? And the answer is no. As long as you are physically able to, you can do BDSM. And the way you do it might be different than somebody who's 20 would do it, but it's still a possibility. And the majority of people that are active members of local kink spaces are primarily in the older age range of like 40 and above anyway. So you're not going to be hurting for company in that age bracket. Which movies include BDSM? So many movies. You should check my FAQ, JK. I believe I have a section that links to my BDSM movie list, but there's lots. And I haven't even broken down and organized by like documentaries versus kink-focused movies versus movies that have kind of like kink subtext but not really like are overtly kinky. So there's lots of movies out there, JK. If you are in the mood for a kinky movie, there are many of them. And Netflix especially tries to make them happen. And I'll just mention this really briefly because it is sort of related to this, is I am also going to be doing a review still for Love and Leashes. I need to rewatch it again and like take notes on it. I just haven't done that yet. It's going to be after the How to Build a Sex Room video, so just be aware of that. I'm going to do it eventually. It is a BDSM movie, and if you like K-dramas, if you don't mind having to read subtitles, there is a really good movie currently on Netflix that is very recent, that's called Love and Leashes. So check that out. Oh, okay, so Mr. Beansman.
Mr. Beansman
there we go.
donated $5. At my high protocol party last weekend, I was a human candelabra and had a blast. We were using lead candles, but we talked about using bloodplay candles next time. Any recommendations?
Yeah, so I guess it depends on like how you're doing the being a human candelabra. Like, can you hold things in a jug? So the one place I know of that, so wax play, I have a whole list of like wax play places you can go to, but there's all sorts of options between soy and paraffin, and I would recommend getting like big pillar candles that are gonna burn a little bit more slowly. So what I would look for is I think let me see. They usually have a pretty good. Oh, they have a. I think they've restocked a little bit. This is the last time I was on here. But the one that I know that is pretty reliable for shipping, and I think is pretty near to where I think you are, is Pan's Haven. A lot of wax play places do not. They take a while to make things because candles can take a while to cure. And so these ones, they I know they ship within a couple of days usually, so it's a lot easier to, you know, get the product you want on time. And they also do occasionally make stuff that's in like little holdable jugs, which might be better, though it sort of ruins the candelabra effect. Let me see if the other place that I've personally gotten products from is a place called Whipping Wood. And again, I'm putting a link to that in the chat now. They have a little bit of like narrower like style pillar candles. But I've used their products. I know that they work really well. There's other places that I like that I think make really good quality candles, but they don't make candles. It takes so long to get an order from them that like if you want something for like next weekend or like for a party, even within the next month, I wouldn't risk ordering from them. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I know for sure of. But yeah, I'd probably recommend like the bigger the better for the candles, especially if you can find something that has like a really wide base to it, like the actual candle itself is kind of larger, because then it's gonna burn. Like if you're just holding the candle, it's gonna burn down the sides less quickly and burn down more slowly, generally speaking, just because it takes a while for like the melt pool to go that far across like a wider diameter of the candle, if that makes sense. And generally, obviously, especially if you're going to be holding something in your hands, you want something that is lower temperature. You can't always guarantee the temperature a candle's going to melt at. You can kind of expect sort of a range. But just be careful, go slowly. And if it hurts, don't use it anymore. That's my advice. All right, next question. Let's go. Hey, my girlfriend is a switch, and I think I am too, yet I have watched a couple actual non-penetration... Okay, that sentence did not go where I was expecting. I watched a couple of actual non-penetration scenes, and I don't know if I can do that as emotionally connected to her. Do you have any suggestions? Well, that's a great question, Hippie Farmer. That is something a lot of people go through when they are trying to introduce kink into a previously vanilla relationship and thinking, oh my gosh, how can I hurt this person I love? What if they hate me? What if this ruins our relationship? I'm too emotionally connected to her. And I think one, those are all valid feelings, right? You're totally allowed to feel that way. And some people choose not to have romance be part of their BDSM relationships because they don't want to like go past what they see as a boundary there. But there are lots of people that do BDSM that do have it be emotionally connected, and it's the emotional connection that makes the BDSM really, really good. And they couldn't do BDSM if they didn't have that. So just keep that in mind. There's many different ways to approach BDSM in terms of like the emotional connection that underlies that, be it just friendship, be it a long-term romantic relationship, be it, we're just sort of strangers that are playing because it both pleases us and nothing else besides that. So there's lots and lots of ways to do that. But I don't know where you've watched scenes before, if it's been like in person at a dungeon, or if you mean like you've seen stuff on like kink websites or like OnlyFans or something. And if it's anything that you've seen online, I will just quickly caveat that you really can't go off of what's presented online, because especially the negative emotions for the bottom or submissive partner tend to be over amplified. Like it seems really terrible and they're really crying and they're really screaming for mercy. It seems way, way, way over the top. And you don't always get to see the same sort of like happiness and joy and connection that can be present in actual real BDSM scenes. And like, I think it's also worth understanding that sort of the presentation of like happiness and joy in kink can be different. I don't know if you had the opportunity, if this was in person, to talk to anyone that was on the receiving end of those scenes. And I don't even know, like you're talking about being a switch, so maybe you're talking about like you couldn't, bottom to her because of your emotional connection. I'm sort of assuming you mean from the sense of like, I don't think I could do this to her, because that's, you know, most people have more qualms about stuff being doing stuff to others versus things being done to them for emotional like connection reasons. So I apologize if I'm off base with some of this advice because of that. But I think it's worth sort of understanding that in kink, the way that people react to certain things can be visually counterintuitive, and what you from the outside might see as like clear terrible distress of like, oh my god, that person is clearly in terrible pain and hates this and needs it to stop right now, and they're hating it, this person's really hurting them, they don't care about them. But if you actually had a conversation with them after everything was over and done with, they would say, oh my god, I love this is we've been doing this every weekend for 10 years and we don't have any plans on stopping. We love it. It makes me happy, it makes them happy, and we're just, you know, this is our life and we love it. And so you got to keep that in mind as well, sort of the presentation of how happiness can look can just be a little bit different in kink, and that's sort of one of the things that makes kink so special and interesting to get to explore. And there's ways to do BDSM that are very emotionally connected that I think can serve the connection in your relationship. There is certainly one style of doing BDSM that is cold and dark and distant and sort of being this like almost like otherworldly or very powerful but far away force where like you're sort of commanding from on high and you're like untouchable and they're like so far beneath you and like acting in a way where you, I mean, you care about like them in like the sense of like you respect limits and boundaries and all of that, but like, you know, you're sort of like almost selfishly using them for your own pleasure and your own gain. And that is certainly something that can happen. But that's one style among many, right? There's actually, you might really enjoy. It's still linked on my channel, and you can search for Master Arcane on my channel. He's also on YouTube, and they do have a website as well as a book. Again, it's Master Arcane, as in, you know, the divine, the arcane, the magical, the mystical, that spelling of the word arcane and that meaning. And they have a specific approach to doing BDSM that they call romantic, I think romantic dominance or romantic BDSM, and you might find that really appealing if you're wanting to respect and reinforce that emotional connection in your relationship, because there is a way to do it, and this is what I prefer for my own kink if I'm doing it in like a DS context, is having something that's really like emotionally close. It's about like the depth of your trust and your surrender you're giving to your partner because of how strong that connection is. And you don't have to involve pain play. You don't have to do anything that's not pleasurable as well, right? Like if you as a top or a dom don't want to do impact play, if you don't want to inflict pain, if you don't want to make them scream, that's all fine. You can stick to the fun, happy stuff, right? You can stick to the things that only produce those happy, good, positive emotions, whether in a very like obvious like outward way, right? Even because I talked earlier about like you know, the presentation of feelings can be kind of counterintuitive. You can also just stick with the stuff where like you both really know that it's directly pleasurable, right? Be it overloading them with tons of orgasms with orgasm control, or you know, light bondage, or sensation play, or wax play, or erotic massage. Like there's tons of options for doing kink that don't involve pain. And I think it's also a misconception that BDSM relationships are like, it's about pain and torture and suffering and doing something bad, and like it doesn't have to be that way. You can have a relationship that's very gentle and romantic and pleasure focused as well. So I know this sort of an answer. I feel like I'm prattling on a lot today. That may just be my vibe for the minute, but that is my 2 cents for now. So any follow-up questions, anything else you want to add on to that experience, I hope that kind of helps clear up some things for you, but really just at the end of the day, like, you know, start small. Do really small things. Do what you would normally do for your intimate behavior, for your sex, and just sort of slowly add things on in an open, communicative way, with the intention of it adding pleasure and making your relationship stronger and better, right? Be that trying a blindfold or a feather tickler, or you know, kind of doing maybe different dirty talk than you normally do, or maybe adding a little bit of like bondage or cuffs. Like there's little things you can add in to start exploring in that area that if it doesn't work, super easy to pull back on, right? You don't have to go full hog. You don't have to, you know, just suddenly go full BDSM, let's build a dungeon. You can start really, really small and just work up from there, and only stay in what's comfortable, only stay in what it directly feels very good that you both want to keep going on. And then there's room for later, if you decide you want to keep going down this path, to sort of expand and say, hey, like, okay, now we know kind of where's comfortable, let's start kind of poking around these edges and see where else we can go farther in that's a little bit outside of our comfort zone that can also be really rewarding. So anyways, I will happily answer any follow-up questions, any follow-up comments. Let's move on to the next question. Also, I want to explore my submission, but I'm nervous to let go. Again, I would just kind of quickly, because I gave a whole spiel already, I will just briefly say, you know, same advice as what I said at the very end there. You know, start really slowly. Start with things that you know feel good. Again, be that like wearing a butt plug, or verbal teasing, or light restraints, or a blindfold, or you know, them having, like, even if you're just doing something during sex, right? Like it could be, you know, that having them, like, you know, pull on the back of your hair, or scratch down your back, or having them like hold your wrists or talk to you in a more authoritative way. Like there's things you can do to kind of start exploring in that direction, where you don't even necessarily have to fully let go in this really, like, you know, completely giving over my, you know, entire body to them while they do like this really elaborate scene to me. You don't have to go that far yet. You can just start with the really, really small stuff, and just, you know, if you've never swam before, you don't dive into the deep end, right? You wade in slowly off of going down the steps of the pool with the guardrail, and then you slowly and slowly and slowly get into the deeper part until the point that you feel comfortable, right? Like, don't go deeper than what feels good for you. Don't go deeper because you feel like you have to, because that's what other people do. Just stay where it feels good for you, and don't try to go farther than that, because there can be this temptation of like, well, I need to be, you know, this kind of dom, I need to be this level of submissive, and I can only do that, I can only meet everyone else's expectations if I push my own boundaries and go deeper and farther, which you don't necessarily, or even should necessarily do. So, all right, next question. I have a question. I was arrested by the feds in 2020 and went to jail. What is your opinion on incorporating what I learned in there in play? I don't know if you mean in there, like being in the slammer, but generally, you know, life experience can inform kink, and as long as it's consensual, you know, it's consensual, right? Negotiation is very important. Having your partner being fully consenting, and eventually having the possibility of being able to revoke their consent is what is important. And no further comment on that scenario, I suppose. We are getting towards the hour where one of my neighbors or someone across the street decides to do like parking lot donuts. So just like FYI, there may be some really like screechy tire noises happening. I promise it's not a car accident. It's just somebody that really likes to practice doing donuts on a daily basis for some reason. It's 36 books. Wow, that is a lot of books from one man. Stream frozen. That's weird. Okay, well, I hope it's not something on YouTube's end, because from what I can tell, my stream's fine. I actually haven't gotten any warnings this stream. I've been very, very pleasantly surprised. Yeah, it's the Story of O movie they did is in French, I believe, and I've never watched it, so I'm a fake and a poser because I've never watched the Story of O movie. I promise at some point I will watch it. I just haven't gotten there yet. One of the gore moves was on, or movies, was on MST3K with the books cut out. Really? Oh my gosh, I never knew that. That's funny. It's separate as per the ideology, at least that's what I believe. Yeah, Second Life, that was the thing I was talking about. We're in the part where I'm talking about gore. I'm trying to like read through questions, but there's oh, do you have an opinion on Second Life? Not really. I mean, I have sort of the stereotype in my head of like what Second Life is like, but I've never used it myself, so I really don't feel like I have like an informed opinion about what Second Life is like. My understanding is people still use it. I still like, if I'm looking, for example, I'm actually working on a list right now of BDSM furniture makers. And so when I was looking for like St. Andrew's crosses or spanking benches or whatever, very oftentimes in my search, I would get to a point where instead of being like real furniture, it would be like screenshots of things from like Second Life. And I'd be like, that's how I would have known I went too far, and I would have to do a different search term combination. So I don't really have any opinion about it. I think my general sort of impression of it is there's people on there that legitimately find BDSM, and they build long-term relationships off of it that are healthy and functional and wonderful and great. There's also people that are on there that get kind of lost in the sauce, and they get like really convinced that what they're doing is like, okay, so this is maybe one of my weak points as a kink educator, in that I haven't done like a purely online BDSM relationship before. I've had online relationships, but I haven't done something that's BDSM focused before, and I don't mentally connect with that. I think especially after having had so many in-person kink relationships, I don't think I could have an online only kink relationship and have that feel as authentic or as real to me. Online relationships are valid relationships, whether they're BDSM or vanilla or whatever. But for me, it is hard to understand like the psychology of how you could never meet someone. And now today there's so many options for like, you know, Zoom calls and FaceTime and Google Hangouts and texting and Discord voice chats and playing video games together long distance. There's lots of ways to like know someone and see their face and hear their voice and connect with them on a deeper level than like when I had online relationships, when like video chatting was not really a thing. Like, you know, you could like give them your phone number and do a phone call, but that was like as advanced as it was gonna get, you know. You could send pictures of, you know, yourself as an email attachment, and like that's, you know, that's as detailed as it got. So I think there's a way to maybe make it more like an in-person relationship than maybe, you know, we had options for in like the 2000s and the early 90s. So you know, or even the late 90s for that matter, more accurately maybe. So I personally sort of have my mindset. I can't get into the headspace of believing that I'm like purely and forever a permanent slave of somebody that I met over the internet, that I've never met in person. And there's definitely people that are on Second Life where they get so into the role play, and this is actually where we get certain like conventions from. If you've seen people that do the like lowercase I, and they speak in like the third person, and they use like capital / lowercase we, like, they do stuff like that. That really comes from like online role-playing kink communities for people that had online BDSM relationships, because they wanted a way to like legitimize like communicating their power exchange, basically. I'm not sure if that's the best way of describing the motivations, but that's sort of what it is. And I very much think that's very interesting, that's a tool that was used to do that. But I personally don't really I just think sometimes like people get so into the role play because it can be so erotically thrilling, and people masturbate while they do it, and of course it's going to create mental associations of feeling like somebody you've never met could completely own your body for now and forever, which is like the level that some people take it to. And it's like, I don't know, you're kind of just like two avatars interacting in like a outdated 3D model. Like, I don't understand. Like, okay, not my thing. I don't fully understand how that's like possible. but sure. And what's funny is oftentimes when that is attempted to like be translated into an in-person relationship, the level of power exchange tends to go down. Because it turns out actually maintaining a really high level power exchange relationship, whether you label it MS, owner property, total power exchange, authority transfer, blah, 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 whatever you call it, those sorts of things are very hard to maintain in person, even when you are highly motivated. Not impossible, but very difficult to do, even if you've spent like years building it up online. Because also like online, because you're building it up in your head to be whatever you want it to be, you're not getting to like the things where like, you know, somebody makes a mistake on like a bondage tie they're doing and then your like arm goes numb, or they forget the safety shears at home at the dungeon and you are really mad at them about it because it's a violation of your trust in them, or they say they really totally know what they're doing about knife play, and then you get into doing a scene and then they clearly don't know what the fuck they're doing. Like, there's all sorts of things that can happen in real life that just simply do not happen on online, facilitated interactions. It should pop up in a second. We have a question or a statement here from Ajax the Greatest. I'm not sure why it's not. Maybe I'm just like really early on this, but it says, Ajax says, I was talking to my wife about basically getting a GIMP suit. I was thinking punishment, but I think she's thinking punishment. At what point does an activity... There we go. There's the delay. I don't know if it's going to read all that out loud. I'll give it a second. That's gonna be a no. But I think she's thinking that at what point does that activity go from being one to the other? I mean, I feel like the obvious answer is how much fun you're having. Is that a cop-out? I don't... Because, so you're saying, you're thinking about it as a punishment. So that means that you want a GIMP suit, and you would wear it as a form of punishment because you committed some kind of relationship transgression. You broke a rule. You didn't meet an obligation. You didn't, get the laundry into the dryer within 5 minutes. I don't know, like any of a number of things. And legitimately, you are not deriving any direct pleasure from the GIMP suit itself. It is about being humiliated, being punished, and being taught a lesson to not do it again in the future. And it's in no way like intrinsically rewarding for you. Whereas it sounds like your wife is thinking is like, you're going to enjoy it, but we're going to kind of play like you're not really enjoying it. Or like the role play context is like you're getting punished because you've been bad, even though you've never really done anything wrong. And it's like you're pretending you got punished, or you're being punished even though, again, you didn't really do anything wrong. It's just for fun. So I think like the initial mindset matters so much that it's kind of difficult for one to just become the other, unless some pretty extenuating circumstances end up taking place. So, for example, I could see, let's say from the direction of like a punishment becoming a punishment is when it gets too real, or maybe the dom tries to make the punishment scene into a punishment scene, maybe even subconsciously, where they start going really hard and making it really painful and unpleasurable on purpose because of a rule you broke last week that they didn't talk to you about. Or they have a secret list in their head of all of your transgressions that they haven't told you about. And they're going to let it out at some point, and you might even not even know that it's happening. And what you thought you were getting into was a punishment scene, and then it becomes a punishment. Or maybe you're doing something that was originally intended to be a punishment, but because of your mindset that day, because of the headspace you're in, like maybe you had a really hard week at work, or, you've been sick, whatever XYZ things happen. And, something that normally would be fun for you to play around with suddenly isn't as fun. as it normally is for you, and then it sort of becomes more of a punishment. It can also go in the other direction of the punishment becoming a punishment because you're trying a new thing as a punishment. And it turns out that you both really like it more than you thought you would. And oopsie doopsie, you want to do it again later. So the punishment didn't really actually work that well. Because now the thing that was supposed to be a punishment is kind of becoming its own reward. So whoopsie, you failed at actually being a punishment. Or maybe you just are in a certain mindset that day where it's supposed to be a punishment and you're supposed to feel bad, but it ends up kind of just being funny and silly, and you just like, that's just how it is. So those are some reasons why. And I guess if you're getting a brand new item you haven't tried before, you don't really know. You could have an idea in your head of like, this is intended to be for this purpose, but it might end up being for something else if you don't have previous experience with it. So it could definitely go either way. But again, I don't think there's a pretty big speed bump in the road between punishment and punishment, and I think there should be. And so it's a little bit more difficult than just accidentally going from one to the other, unless you genuinely really don't know a lot about, your own kinks enough or your partner's own kinks enough to really be able to reliably tell accurately what's going to be a punishment thing versus, what's not. Yeah, online kink communities are pretty iffy on gore in like 2010ish. Yeah, they got a little roasted there for a while. I think people are like so I didn't really mention this at the time about gore, but I think the people who sort of base their relationships around the planet of gore in John Norman's works, they tend to have a reputation for misogyny. I didn't mention that. I'm bringing it up now because I really should. It's a big thing. Because especially in the early books, and from what y'all have said later on in this chat, it sounds like he did introduce the idea of Kajir Rus and male submissives and slaves later on. But the idea is that wouldn't really happen because men on Gore would rather kill themselves than become slaves. And so they don't, generally. It's like Klingons. Klingons are supposed to kill themselves when they get captured unless there's reasonable chance of escape. So it's sort of similar vibes to that, I suppose. But they because of the fact it tends to lean very strongly in a particular gender direction, and because it's based on a whole fucking solar system, having this like women have this role and men have this role type mentality, at least you can have that reading of it, it tends to attract people that believe certain things inherently about the genders. Like, all men are superior to women, and they believe in like misogyny and the patriarchy and male superiority, not in a role play way, but like in a real life, I want this to be how my actual life every day functions. This is how I think about all women type shit. Like, it's not just in a bedroom, like, role play funsy time. It's like they have legitimate, like, political beliefs that inform the way they interact with other people and the way that they want government to function that can be harmful. And not everyone who's into gore is that way, but because of the way it's presented, and I think partly the age of the writer and some other factors, it tends to attract a certain mindset that is not really largely pushed back on or like nipped in the bud. There was actually there was someone I think that got fired from their tech job a couple years ago. I don't remember where I heard about this, but there was somebody who got fired from their tech job because their employer found out that they had like a secret like gore lifestyle vlog, like blog, like a not a vlog, a blog. They had like a website, and apparently a lot of the views they expressed in that were pretty misogynistic. And they're saying, well, no, it's about my consensual, like, role play lifestyle. I don't believe this every day, blah, blah, blah. And then the employer was like, no, like, and now that we know this is how you think about women and what you want to do with women, like, female staff members, like, aren't comfortable working around you. So, them's the breaks, as Boris Johnson would say. So I don't actually know what ended up happening at that story, what the truth sort of ended up being about, who was in the right or wrong with, that person and their employer. But that is one of the reputations of gore, is Gender, they have opinions about it. And heaven help you if you're trans. That's the other thing. They tend to be very women equal vagina and nothing else like type folks. So there's also that to contend with. I don't know if that's necessarily always the case these days, but for a long time it was. Yep. There's the donut people. Have fun making your donuts. And the motorcycle as well. Cool. All right, I don't think you guys can hear any of that, but I feel like I have to bring it up because it's so loud. It, like, distracts me. I answered the question about the slave poses. Did I miss a question from Caitlin? Disabilities can so often get in the way of living scenarios. I mean, hey, it depends on like what you're working with and if you have the ability to change your living space at all. You know, if you can get an ADA compliant room, that can definitely help. Again, depending on what it is you got going on. But as Chasing Dragons is already very helpfully pointed out and spelled for me, thank you. Raven Caldera and Del Tashleen did a pretty good series on disabilities. Yes, Raven Caldera, the one for dominance I think is called Hell on Wheels. And the one for submissives is Kneeling in Spirit. They also have a pair of books for mental health as well. Those ones are for physical disabilities, and they are great books. Highly recommend them. And they're about like the personal stories of people that have BDSM relationships and how that interfaces with either their mental health or their disability. Both good stories and bad stories. Times where it works out and times where it didn't. So very realistic, very good stuff. Highly recommend it, and you know, very important stuff. I have mods, but none of them showed up. Like, for the record, I have like 4 or 5 mods and none of them are here. So, you know, that's that happens sometimes. Yeah, I know there's free women in the books. Obviously, it's like, so to be clear, in the world of gore, not every woman is a slave, but almost all the people who are slaves are women. There's also free women as well. But even then, I think their social status is less compared to men, even if they're in like the same, like, you know, caste, basically. Evie, have you read the Marketplace series by Laura Antonou? I would have expected you to mention it in one of your videos. If you had to, I figured you haven't. 5,000% recommend it to you. I've not read it yet. It's on my Google. On Amazon, I have like a book list of like books to buy for my Kindle. I've not picked that one out yet. I should though, because I haven't really been doing a lot of reading this summer, and I normally read quite a bit. So maybe I should just go ahead and buy that and like, you know, spend some time outdoors reading that this summer for sure. I've heard really good things, so you're not the first person to mention it. I just haven't read it yet. Yes, I apologize. I did not see the previous comments from the person that ended up getting blocked. I was too busy answering questions. My bad. Just happy to have found my identity at 67. I am peculiace. Had never heard that term before last week. I mean, I haven't either. I'm going to have to Google that one. The second that I heard that definition, it perfectly describes my attitude towards kink and sex. Okay, I have not heard that. Listen, we're all learning something new today. What is peculiace? Pecoliace? That's what, okay, the LGBTA plus wiki, which, okay, it's, the URL is LGBTQIA wiki, but that's not what the title, anyways, it says it says pronounced pecoliace is a term on the asexual spectrum in which one experiences no sexual attraction or arousal except towards kink or fetish acts. Oh, of course. Okay, yeah. The name is sort of is a little cutesy, I suppose. But yeah, that makes sense. Those who are peculiars are unattracted to non-kink related and or non-fetish related sexual activity. They may have specific kinks and or fetishes. I should make a video about this. Or may be all or almost all kinks or fetish acts that arouse them. Interesting. The term was coined by what's the name? Crypto Crew, specifically Angel, on May 6th of 2021. So that's like, you know, a new thing. I don't know who Crypto Crew is. But interesting stuff. So I will keep that in my back pocket. I would love to explore that idea more, because I think there are a lot of people that are like more or less asexual, except for like particular fetishes they have. And I think that's sort of an interesting axis of experience that doesn't really get talked about ever. I would love to see some scientific research about that, because I'm sure that is a wider phenomena amongst people that have fetishes than we probably know about. Okay, so I got the Streamlabs question. I got the poses question. Okay, the Nightbot thing still isn't fixed, and I don't know why. I'm gonna have to look at that. Anyways. Okay, we're on to the sugar baby stuff. Okay. Well, I got yeeted to the one in the chat. Okay. Hold on to your horses here. Wait, what? Do you know anything about male squirting? How can it be incorporated into an orgasm denial and orgasm torture scene? I don't know what male squirting is, and I don't like penis enough to Google it. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I will not be exploring the world of male squirting. Is that like... Okay, this is confusing for me. Like, without having to Google it, could somebody explain to me in words what that means? Because isn't male squirting just coming? Isn't squirting the, like people think that squirting is always orgasmic, but it's not. And it's really about having like a female representation of sex that is closer to what men do when they orgasm, and that's partly why I think anyway squirting is so popular. So is male squirting like a piss play thing? Is it like a water sports thing, or is it like not being able to control your orgasm? Like, what's up with that? Do you still have merch, and can we share the link here? Yeah, my merch is linked in all of my videos. It's on Teespring. I will pop the link in there for you. I have not updated it in quite a while, more or less for the reason, to make a very long story short, Teespring was supposed to have a incorporation with YouTube, where as a creator I was going to be able to you know, have a merch shelf and display my merch items, you know, really nice and neatly on my, if you went to a YouTube video, you could see my merch. You guys have probably seen on other creator stuff. I asked them for years about why it wasn't available. I met all of the requirements. I exceeded the requirements, and I was like, why is it that, you know, somebody with half my viewers, half my you know, sub count or whatever has access to this, and I still don't? And the people on Teespring's end just didn't know why. And then eventually Pup Amp of Watts of Safe Words having the same issue, and we found out that because of the nature of our content, even though that now people with only 1,000 subscribers can use a merch shelf, they can't even necessarily fully monetize their channels, but they can use a merch shelf. They will be allowed to have the integration, but because of the nature of our content, we will never be allowed to use this one feature. It is literally just a punishment for no particular reason. Like, they think that our merch is going to be like more sexual than like some of the merch that like anime reviewers make or like cosplayers make. Like, come on. Like, you know, I get, you know, being a little bit nervous about that, but then just like, you know, if somebody misuses the feature and makes inappropriate merchandise, like, and Teespring has its own rules as well, they just remove the feature. So I you know, was just like, okay, whatever. I'm happy with the designs that I've made. I'm gonna stick with those, and then that's it more or less. So Yeah, they did change recently. I don't think a lot of the unisex t-shirts are available because they changed suppliers for that, and then it was like a whole complicated mess. But I do have a merch store if you want to check it out. I just don't promote it as much because YouTube doesn't want me to promote it, and I'd rather spend my energy on something that is more productive for my time, basically. And I'm also happy with what I've made as well. So, okay, so that's that. If I know what we're talking about, I can answer. I know a bunch of about penis-based orgasm denial. I googled it. In male squirting, urine in the bladder gushes out from the external urethral orifice due to strong contractions of the prostate and pelvic striated muscles. There you go. Okay, so... Okay, but here's the thing, though, is I don't think you could incorporate... So I am not a penis owner. People who are penis owners, feel free to, check me. My understanding is it is very hard to pee when you have an erection of the harder you are, the harder it is to pee. And so if you're trying to incorporate male squirting into an orgasm denial or play scene, at best, you'd have to only have a semi. So maybe this would work if somebody was in a really hardcore cock cage or something, and then you so then they couldn't get an erection. I don't really know, but my understanding is that sort of it's like a train track switch type scenario where you can't you got one cuts off the flow of the other type deal. So you can't it's not impossible, but it's it's quite difficult to pee while also having an erection. So I think if you were trying to do orgasm torture, probably wouldn't work that well. Maybe orgasm denial though would be better. From the videos I've seen, after the orgasm, they overstimulate, then it squirts out. Oh, I see. Okay, so in that case, I guess it would be you have to make sure. So this seems really complicated, to be honest. You got to make sure they have a full bladder. Then you have to make them come, and then afterwards you have to stimulate their prostate so much that they pee afterwards. This seems like a lot of work. Now I'm not interested in penises, and this shit is why. This sounds like way too much work for something. Just do regular water sports. I don't know. This is a very complicated order of operations. Penis owner here, peeing when hard isn't very difficult, to be honest. It's just slightly harder or annoying. It also depends on the person. Yeah, I mean, from the partners I've had, they've told me it's very difficult, but I don't have a penis, so I literally only have anecdotal evidence. From this one online scientific report, male squirting sounds like when you have a second orgasm. No, well that's being okay. Now we're getting into so many terms. All right, so there's you can separate ejaculation from orgasm. So for men, you can have another orgasm or multiple orgasms without ejaculating every time, and that's sort of how you can train, a person with a penis to have multiple orgasms. Is generally you decouple the act of ejaculation from having an orgasm. I mean that's for my understanding is not being somebody who gives a shit about penises generally, not somebody that, plays with penises, not somebody that has a penis. My understanding is decoupling those two things enough to be able to do that reliably is a fairly complex process. Not impossible, but, requires some dedication in a way that, a lot of women being able to, or vagina owners, I guess, let's say, I'm using male because, like I said, we started with that language, and I'm trying to remember. I just think, but also at the same time, if you're somebody who's trans and you're on HRT, I imagine to some degree that also has an effect on your ability to do things like this. But also, if you're trying to have somebody that has a vagina have multiple orgasms, then generally that's a little bit easier to train than having to decouple the act of ejaculating from having an orgasm as somebody with a prostate and a penis. So I don't know. Again, it sounds complicated. Can't be bothered. Isn't male squirting just having tons of pre-cum? That's what I originally thought. But I don't know. Like, I don't want to look for it. We're just going off of what the chat thinks this is about, okay? Another thing to consider is that someone isn't necessarily hard when they have a prostate orgasm. Okay, listen, that's a very good point. Prostates, if you've got multiple options, you know, that definitely makes all this, all this different conversation. It's like a combo overstimulation and piss kink or water sports because it feels sensitive or ticklish. Oh, I get it. Okay. Yeah. HRT changes so much of plumbing related things that it could just be an hour-long video. I know, really, though. I have to do like a round table of like, hello, everyone doing the different HRT things. Let's have a conversation. Like, and it would be great to be able to talk about that because I think, you know, it's worth, I think, getting into because it's something a lot of people don't talk about or don't know how to talk about. And I think having like a affirming, positive, kink-friendly way of talking about how like HRT or surgery even like changes your sexual experience is like totally worth talking about because you don't want other people to go into that blind and not knowing what's going to happen or what to expect, right? Quicker to use mass spectrometry. I mean, you know, I've had access to the technology. I feel like this is like almost the same conversation as when people were trying to figure out what the fluid was that people produced for female squirting. They were like, is it pee? Is it not pee? Is it ejaculate? Like, what's happening? And a long answer short there, we basically figured out that it is most likely in most cases fluid from your bladder, so basically really diluted pee, and sometimes some amount of liquid produced by a gland, and I don't know how to pronounce the name of it, but it's called the Skene's gland, I want to say. Is there a pronunciation guide for this? It's a skene. Skeen. That's what it says. The more you know. Skene's glands produce a milk-like ultrafiltrate of blood plasma. Whoa, that's hardcore. The glands may be the source of female ejaculation, but this has not been proven because they and the male prostate act similarly by secreting prostate-specific antigen, PSA, which is an ejaculate protein produced in males, and prostate-specific acid phosphate, phosphatase. Some authors refer to Skene's glands as the female prostate. It is a homologous. Why can't I say that? I keep wanting to say homunculus, like this is fucking Full Metal Alchemist. It is an analogous structure to the male prostate, developed from the same embryological tissues, but its homology is still a matter of research. Again, we still, like, there's the one area of medicine that we truly do not know shit all about is female anatomy. So, just goes to show you that, you know, when it comes to, you know, does everyone just have a different kind of prostate? Like, is this female ejaculate? Is this the female prostate? And again, it's sort of like, can we even just, like, maybe not call it as, like, female? Like, I feel weird about comparing anatomical structures as like, oh, it's prostate for women. Like, it just I feel like big pens for women. Like, it's just like we don't have to. It's like sort of treating like the male, air quotes, right, the penis having body's structure as being the default in anatomy, and the other versions of that, any deviation of that is like, oh, well, this is like the girly version of this. Like, it just feels weird. Like, can you imagine if, like, because there's a lot of analogous structures between like where things develop from like an embryonic stage and you know, the penis is basically just the male clitoris. Like, if we're gonna think about it like from that perspective, like we just turned this around and said, well, actually, did you know that a penis is actually just a really big clit? Like, but no one talks about it like that. So, anyways, that is that apparently. Oh my gosh. Apparently it also contains high concentrations of glucose and fructose. Is that why people like eating pussy? Is it because it tastes like sugar? Like, what? What is happening? I don't know if anything on this Wikipedia page is true, but it's blowing my mind. All right, I'm going to stop that. I don't like the pictures on it are kind of gross, TBH. I don't like being on that page. Yeah, the male is default and the female body being an afterthought. Yeah, exactly. It's like we're so behind, and it's like like you think you want to understand like a little bit more about like how the anatomy of the thing that all like human beings are not currently, as far as I know, able to be grown in the lab. So like maybe we should figure out a little bit more like what the anatomy of like all that stuff is and what it does. It seems like it might be important for like what if we find out that it plays like a huge role in like reproduction, you know? Like also, if you are on HRT, Girl Sex 101 is a fantastic book for pretty much anyone who isn't a cis man / AMAB NB who isn't on HRT. Sections on trans bodies, disabled bodies, and just general good women love and women play. All right, I have heard good things about that book, so duly noted. Girl Sex 101. Do they talk about the Skeens gland though, and the fact that it tastes like fruit sugar? did they talk about that? So you're saying pussy isn't keto? I mean, apparently not. It's not keto friendly, I'm sad to say. But it is vegan, so there's that. Probably. I know there's some vegans that are probably like the same sort of vegans that are like, is it okay to have a baby drink breast milk? Are probably the same ones that are like, is it okay? Is it okay to like swallow cum? Like, oh my goodness, some people just take it a little too far, you know? Anyways, I should get back into some other questions. As fun as it is to talk about anatomy and Wikipedia articles, I literally fucking somehow have 7 minutes left. Thank you all for sticking with me through this. I feel the headache is still there, but through the sheer power of ranting, I have been able to distract myself from the headache. So thank you for that. All right, I'm gonna try to get to where we were earlier in the chat. I know I've probably missed like so many questions. Somebody just say something about my experience with Second Life is that it is a money pit with little community interaction. Yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah, especially as games get older. That's upsetting, but you know, sadly not surprising in this day and age. It could be worse. It could be a cryptocurrency Discord chat. Am I right? Late to stream because I vacuumed my whole apartment. What's the vibe today? Talking about how penises are big clits and orgasm torture and gore and online BDSM apparently. Little bit of some bad vibes at the beginning because I felt bad about starting the stream late and I have a headache. But I feel like we've bounced back. We've got a solid stream I think after that. Listen, I get stun locked sometimes. I can't help it. I really should have music I play for when I'm trying to get to questions. Wouldn't that just make this whole experience better? Okay, I'm at the bottom of the chat for what I can currently see. So I'm just going to start from there. I like the older crowd too because I can learn from them. Yeah, I think a lot of people sort of assume that if they're like, you know, 25, they're not going to want to be around, or it would be really awkward to be around like somebody who's like 40 years old and a kinkster. But really, like, because you have that shared experience of kink and that same like shared hobby, it's, at least in my experience, it hasn't really been that hard to relate to people even when they're like old enough to be one of my grandparents. Like, it hasn't really been that difficult, and I genuinely very enjoy it, especially the older people. I think are very eager oftentimes to pass on their knowledge and like see that a newer generation is still being part of the community and revitalizing it and going to those spaces and keeping them alive. So okay, I talked about the wax play. Dun, 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 dun. I'm trying to work through feelings of dismissal in a long-term relationship. Kink has always played a part, but now I'm being told that it is only my thing and shouldn't be necessary. Okay, Jay. All right, let's talk about this. This, I think, will be... if I take more than 4 minutes to answer it, I will accept that. But that is definitely imagining being in your position and having a long-term relationship that included kink. That's always been part of your relationship. It wasn't like it was introduced last month or anything. And then being told that it's, oh, well, this is only for you and we shouldn't have to do this. Like, I think there's sort of layers to this, right? Because, like, on the one hand, your partner, they have to sit there and evaluate, like, they're an adult. It's their responsibility to say what they are and aren't comfortable with and know what their own limitations are, because you can't know that for them. And if they went through all of this, going along with everything and giving you affirmative consent and saying they were also into stuff and they also liked it, and then now they're saying that, well, I was never into it, it was always just for you, like, you're not a mind reader. Like, if they were never giving you any signals that they didn't really enjoy what was going on or they don't want to do it anymore, like, that's on them for not, one, knowing themselves well enough, and then two, like, not communicating that to you earlier until it comes out in this way that, from your message, comes across as sort of, like, aggressive and blamey, as opposed to, like, I think the way that's more healthy to handle that, but still being honest, is having it more framed as, like, I know that kink is really important to you. I know it's always been a big part of our relationship. I've been doing some self-reflecting in the way that kink plays a role in my life. And I've come to the decision that I don't really want to have kink be something that I do anymore. And, I don't think it's really that fulfilling for me, or I think it served its purpose, but I want to move on from that for right now, or whatever it is. And there's a way to say that, and then that comes across as, like, it's not about, like, insinuating that, like, you forced them to do it, or you tricked them into doing it, or they were only ever doing it to make you happy and no other reason. They never actually enjoyed it. But being, I think, more honest about, like, sometimes you can change your mind, right? Like, kink's not a forever thing for anyone, for everyone. Some people get into kink and they do it for a couple of years and then they, move on. They prioritize having a family. They prioritize their career. They sort of have the fun experiences they wanted to have, and they're like, okay, and I'm done. And that's it. They don't really have anything else that they, want to keep doing, or maybe they were like a man who was seeing a pro dom, and then they decide that they don't really want to have that, be part of their relationship now that they have, like, a serious, like, vanilla relationship, whatever. But I just want to emphasize that there's sort of a way to have that conversation that is, doesn't come across as blamey, and it's possible to do that, even though it is still a hard conversation to have. And certainly your feelings of being dismissed and saying that it shouldn't be necessary simply because they don't want it anymore. Totally valid feelings to have, that feeling of dismissal. And I can see where that's coming from because, it's a two-way street. Kink is, relationships are, and can seem really bad to, have your partner tell you basically, well, I don't want this anymore, so we're not doing this anymore. I don't care if you like it. I don't care if you still really want it. I don't care how important to you it is. Like, whatever, who cares about your feelings? Like, get over it. That comes across as very cold. Now, no one should do kink if they're unhappy with it. No one should do kink if it's taking something away from them or makes them feel worse or is violating one of their boundaries. No one should ever feel forced to do kink. But again, you can express that without having to degrade the other person and being like, well, okay, well, now that I don't want it, you shouldn't need it anymore either. And that's not how it works. Like, your kink desires are oftentimes, I don't know you personally, but oftentimes they're independent of the individual person you're with. Like, you still like being tied up. You still like doing pet play. You still like ABDL. You still like vacuum beds. You still like impact play. Whatever it is that you're into, a desire to do that and have to be part of a relationship doesn't go away just because one particular partner decides they don't want to do it anymore. And having your needs being dictated by their needs is not healthy. Like, your needs get to be separate, right? You get to overlap where those needs are and find compromise points and decide, how to get your needs met in other ways if they can't provide for you and yada yada. But, like, you don't get to go, well, your need can't be a need anymore because it's not a need for me anymore. That's not how this works. So yeah, that's just really, really hard. So I think maybe they're in a place of like, you know, having a lot of, you know, intense emotional feelings themselves right now, and they're not really able to have a healthier conversation about this, as maybe not so like blame focused and dismissive. And they probably need to do a little bit of like healing work themselves first before they're really prepared to kind of dig into what this means about your relationship and what you want to do with it going forward. What is your opinion on belt spanking? I think you got to be careful with it because it can be a trauma trigger for a lot of people. So don't just bring out the belt randomly in the middle of a scene. Talk about it first. Even if you're just doing rough sex, sexy times, don't suddenly rip your belt off your pants by the side of the bed without talking to your sex partner about it first. Because again, trauma triggers. Really don't want to ruin your sex in your relationship by reminding somebody of their dad or their uncle or, you know, abusive older brother or something. So be careful. Be careful. But other than that, it can be fun. It can be a good way to do a lot of different types of role play. A lot of people really enjoy it. I haven't really done a lot with like belt spanking before because I don't prefer that type of sensation. I'm much more of like a thuddy pain person and like, you know, needles, scalpels, prickly things, stuff like that. So I don't really do a lot with that area of kink, but a lot of people are into it. I don't fucking know why people do that as a form of like childhood discipline. People are just like fucking messed up sometimes. I don't know. Yeah, I know, to each their own. Like, yeah, you can totally. Some people are really into burning pain. Some people like me are more into thuddy pain or scratchy pain or electrical pain or temperature. Like, it's all across the board. Um, what do you think of cross dressing? Again, it's controversial. Actually, there was a video I saw yesterday on YouTube from a pro dom that was basically like, why I don't play with cross dressers and sissies. A man in a dress is still a man. Hashtag I stand with J.K. Rowling. You know, that's a real, more or less, you know, not verbatim, a real video title. And there are certainly a lot of people, especially female dominants, that don't feel comfortable playing with, you know, cross-dressers or sissies or maid role play or anything related to that area. I think for, you know, you're allowed to have boundaries, right? If that makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to do it. But sometimes I think it can be based on misconceptions, like, you know, that anyone who wears a dress is trying to be a woman. It's just comfortable. Like, fuck, you think men are supposed to wear jeans in 100-degree weather? I don't think so. Listen, everyone should be allowed to wear any article of clothing they want and not have it be a gender thing. Skirts, dresses, pants, three-piece suits, ties, I don't care. Like, clothing is just clothing, and it's about how you wear it and how it makes you feel internally, okay? That's my hot 2 cents. Cross-dressing is not something I'm into. I don't personally care about it. I don't play with male submissives. Sorry to be disappointed, or I generally don't. And not that I never do. It's not my preference. And I, you know, it's a thing a lot of people are into. It's very popular. And that's more or less it. Okay, I had to be clear here. Male by default for abusers examples. Well, I was giving the example of beating a child with a belt. It's much more likely that a man's going to be wearing a belt. So, like, I'm sorry that the 2 examples that sprang to my head for the specific instance of taking off a belt to beat somebody with came from a man wearing pants. Hashtag women can wear belts. Hashtag women can wear pants. Hashtags women are abusers too. Oh my god, just because one example I gave had a slight gender bent to it does not mean that I think that all men are abusers and no women ever abuse people. Like, technically, could a man, like, beat someone with a high-heeled shoe? Like, yes, but, like, the gender bias states that if somebody's getting beaten with a high-heeled shoe, it's probably a woman on the other end of it. Same thing with, like, you know, somebody taking a belt off of their pants, because most women's belts are decorative, let's face it. What? Why are people so sensitive about this? I feel like the same thing happened in my video about stealthing, where it's like, I spend a little bit of a video talking about a form of reproductive coercion that is a community that is literally named and created by men that is that way because of the inherent beliefs they have about gender and reproduction. that primarily affects receptive partners, not just women. Receptive partners is what I said in the video, and everyone fucking explodes and go, what about the men? What about the men that get trapped with babies by women? And it's like, well, I wasn't talking about that in this video. I was talking about a specific subculture that like has certain beliefs about gender and reproduction that kind of mean that the people who are in it are men, because like, you know, women are generally abusing men under the premise of like believing they have a right to inseminate whoever they want, because like that's not like, why are people like this? Like sometimes you give an example and the example, like I can't make every single example be perfectly gender inclusive. Sometimes I give gendered examples because it's coming off the top of my head and I'm on a fucking live stream. Okay, let's calm down a little bit. I don't actually believe that only men can be abusive or that all men are abusers. Let's just nip that shit in the bud, because it's not true. Because it's not true. No, Eve, you have to cover every single topic and nuance. I mean, literally, like, imagine if every single example I gave, I had to give, like, the cis female version, the cis man version, the trans version, and the non-binary version every single time I gave an example. Like, usually when I do a video, I try to give multiple different examples over the course of the video with different, like, either pronouns or titles or whatever. Though usually I steer more towards gender neutral just by default, but, like, I try to give multiple examples, like, from multiple different directions, but, like, I think if there was data about how, like, what gender of people beats people with belts, I'm sure the number is overwhelmingly male. So, like, I don't know. I'm sorry. The tweet about pancakes and waffles comes to mind. Literally exactly, though. It's like, I like pancakes. Were you saying you fucking hate waffles then? Literally that. That happens on YouTube all the time. Oh, my God. It's like, the whataboutism is strong. I think overall I feel better. I feel really hot though. This room gets really hot in the evening after all the sun. So, you know, that sucks. But I'm almost done, so. Affirming and positive is better, I think. I don't like femme being associated with negative and inferior. Oh, absolutely. I don't know. I kind of go between waffles and pancakes. I'm kind of a waffle pancake switch, I suppose. Is that a thing? Is that an option? Listen, we love pancakes and waffles equally here. There will be no slander of either breakfast food or anytime you happen to eat waffles or pancakes, because they can be snacks at any hour of the day. I hope no one thinks I'm a misandrist or transphobic, but like, some people do, and I guess I have to be so explicitly clear about what my opinions are, because I think a lot of people just like, I say one thing and then people assume, oh my gosh, you said this, so that means you think this. And it's like, no, like, let me be clear. Let me be clear so there's no confusion. I don't hate men. I don't think all men are abusive. I just, sometimes the example that springs to mind, you know what was honestly happening when I gave those examples? I was thinking of a scene that happens in The Boys where a dad beats his kid with a belt. So that is why I gave that example in a gendered way, because I recently watched that episode of The Boys where that particular instance of abuse happens, and it's a man beating his son with a belt. So, like, the show has influenced me to think that men are all men are abusers, I guess. I don't know. That's... Oh yeah, I guess French toast isn't even an option on that list, right? If you love French toast, I think that's like... I don't even know what the equivalent is. Yeah, French toast needs to be included in this conversation, for sure. Dessert for breakfast feels weird. Okay, but like, hear me out. Waffles and ice cream. Pancakes for dinner. Like chicken, like fried chicken and pancakes. Okay, fried chicken and waffles. There are the diverse ways to enjoy the carbohydrate experience. Just blame The Boys, it's fine. Well, to be fair, The Boys is both a good show and extremely hard to watch. So I've only watched kind of the most recent season because one of my roommates is watching it, and I've caught a few episodes of it, and I just go, what's happening? Who are these people? What's going on? Why is this happening? Like, it's been an experience, but yeah. It's all about the syrup, really. High quality maple syrup. And croissants. Croissant. Oh, I feel like we're getting into pastry territory now. I feel like there's stuff that's grilled breakfast food, and then you're getting into baked goods. And then you gotta draw a line in the sand with the baked goods, even if they are consumed at breakfast time. Pulled pork on waffles. True that. Buy breakfast stool. I had it. Buy breakfast stool. It's like bisexual about breakfast. Or pansexual about breakfast, I guess, if you like French toast and crepes as well. Beans on toast. I've never had beans on toast. Is beans on toast good? Switching from gender stereotypes and complicated issues to food. I love it. I mean, listen, it's the end of the stream, all right? Belgian waffles are the best waffles. Did I even have? I don't even think I had Belgian waffles when I was in Belgium. Did I? I must have had it at least once. I don't remember the experience. I remember they love French fries there. Oh my god. The Belgians, they're all about the fries. The frites. That's everywhere. The frites are the king. Dinner for breakfast, breakfast for lunch, and dessert for dinner, or dessert for all meals. when you're in a mood, you know. Man, I wish I had ice cream. I don't have ice cream actually. It just sounds really good. It's also really hot. That's probably why. I think I'll go downstairs and I'll feel better. All right, it is 10 after. I think I need to go because I need more water. And I kind of want to lay down for a little bit and see if I can completely get rid of this headache. So that is, I think, everything for tonight. Thank you all so much for being here. We had some really good conversations today. I apologize if I was a little bit snappier than usual. I am in pain. And you know, it'll get better, I think. But thank you all so much for being here and supporting me. I think having it set to subscriber only mode is going to be something that we continue to going forward because I think it did really help with the spam and everything else. So that's what we're going to do. Again, thank you all so much for being here. We do stream every Friday at 6. So if you want to be here, if I didn't get to your question this time, you always come back next week, next Friday, and we will continue the conversation. So again, thank you all so much, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.